Madeline Carter wasn't looking for anything. That was the truth. At 36, she had a steady life. A nice house in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. A steady job managing a boutique interior design firm. And a marriage that had lasted 12 years. On paper, everything looked fine. Her husband, David, worked in IT. He was stable, responsible, and faithful. He never forgot their anniversary. He made the coffee every morning. He fixed the broken sink without being asked. They were a good team, or at least they used to be. But somewhere along the way, the spark had faded. Their conversations turned into grocery lists. Their kisses were quick, their evenings quiet. It wasn't that David didn't care. He just wasn't present. He came home tired, sat in front of his laptop, and scrolled through news and spreadsheets until bedtime. And Madeline, she went along with it. Until one day, she looked in the mirror and realized she felt invisible. That was when she signed up for the painting class. It was held in a small community, studio downtown, something artsy and casual. She hadn't painted since college, but something inside her missed creating. She told David it was just for stress relief. He barely looked up from his laptop when she said it. "That's great, babe," he muttered, distracted. The first class started on a Thursday evening. The studio smelled like wood, paint, and dust. Students of all ages gathered around large canvases under warm lights. That's when Madeline saw him, Marcus. He wasn't what she expected from an art instructor. Tall, with deep brown skin, strong features, and a quiet, grounded energy. He wore a paint-stained hoodie and carried a warm smile. He walked around the room slowly, offering advice and encouragement. He had a calm voice, the kind you leaned in to hear. Madeline didn't think much of it at first. She wasn't here for attention. She just wanted to feel alive again. But Marcus noticed her on the third class. He stopped beside her canvas and watched as she blended two shades of blue. "You paint from emotion," he said quietly. She looked up, surprised. "Is that a good thing?" He smiled. "It's the best kind of painting." It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. She felt seen, like he wasn't just looking at the canvas, but at her. And for the first time in a long while, someone was really paying attention. From that moment, something shifted. Each week, their conversations grew. Nothing inappropriate, just little moments. He asked her what kind of music she liked, where she grew up, why she stopped painting. She told him bits and pieces. He listened, always fully present, never in a rush. There was something easy about talking to him, something warm. One evening, class ran late. Most students had packed up and left. Madeline stayed behind to clean her brushes. Marcus walked over and leaned against the table. "You ever been to the Midwood Gallery downtown?" he asked. She shook her head. "I'm curating a show there next weekend. Some of my students are featured. You should come." Madeline hesitated. "I might," she said with a soft smile. She didn't tell David about the invitation that Saturday. She stood in front of her closet longer than usual. She chose a simple black dress, not too fancy, but elegant. She curled her hair, added a little eyeliner. Nothing dramatic. But when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different, but because she looked alive. She arrived at the gallery just as the sun was setting. It was a small space, full of energy and conversation. Marcus greeted her at the door. "You made it," he said, smiling. His eyes met hers with something quiet and genuine. She smiled back, feeling something flutter inside her chest. They walked through the gallery together. He introduced her to some of the artists. They stood beside a painting of a red storm. And he talked about the power of contrast, light and dark, chaos and calm. "I think everyone's got their own storm," Marcus said. Madeline nodded slowly. "And some of us just learn to live in the quiet after it." Their eyes met again. That unspoken moment, gentle, close, just outside the line of something deeper. After the event, they stepped outside. The night air was cool. The city buzzed in the background, but around them it felt still. "Thank you for inviting me," she said. "I'm glad you came." There was silence for a moment. Then she spoke again, softer now. "I forgot what this feels like to be noticed." Marcus didn't look away. You should never forget that. She didn't know what to say. She just nodded and smiled, heart pounding. He didn't lean in. He didn't touch her. He didn't have to. Everything had already changed. When she drove home that night, the city lights blurred in her rearview mirror. She pulled into the driveway, stepped inside, and found David asleep on the couch, the TV still playing. She watched him for a moment, then went upstairs, washed her face, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her body was still, but her heart was racing. She hadn't done anything wrong, but she hadn't exactly done something right. Either she knew something was starting, something she wasn't sure she could stop, not because she wanted to be unfaithful, but because she had already started to feel again. And once the heart wakes up, it doesn't go back to sleep easily. After the gallery night, Madeline's thoughts kept returning to Marcus. She told herself it was just because she hadn't felt truly seen in a long time. That was all. She still loved David. She still believed in their marriage. But something inside her had awakened, a spark she thought had died. Years ago, the painting classes became more than just a weekly hobby. They were a refuge, a place where Madeline could breathe, think, and be herself without the weight of expectations or routine. Marcus was always there, calm, encouraging, genuine. He noticed the little things, like when Madeline's brushstrokes became softer, or when her smile was a little brighter. He never pushed, never crossed any boundaries. But his quiet attention made her feel important again. One evening after class, Marcus asked if she wanted to grab coffee. Madeline hesitated. She knew she shouldn't. David might have questioned it if he knew. But the idea of talking with Marcus outside the studio felt like a chance to rediscover a part of herself she had forgotten. They went to a small cafe nearby. The lights were low, the music soft. They sat by the window, watching people pass by on the street. Their conversation flowed easily about art, music, dreams, and life. Marcus shared stories of growing up in Detroit, the struggles and the beauty. Madeline talked about her childhood in Illinois, about her hopes and fears. For a few hours, they were just two people connecting on a level deeper than small talk. It felt safe. It felt honest, but Madeline's heart was confused. She wasn't sure if she was falling for Marcus or if she was just desperate to feel something different from what her marriage had become. David, meanwhile, seemed more distracted than ever. Work consumed him and the emotional distance between them grew. Madeline tried to talk to him, but he would often change the subject or say, "I'm just tired." One night after dinner, Madeline asked gently, "Do you think we're okay?" David shrugged. "We're fine," but she didn't believe him. As days passed, the pull toward Marcus grew stronger. They exchanged messages, not flirty, just kind and thoughtful. Marcus would check in on how her day went, share a song he liked, or recommend a book. One rainy evening, as she was leaving the studio, Marcus offered to walk her to her car. The rain was gentle but steady, and Madeline didn't have an umbrella. They hurried down the sidewalk, laughing as the water soaked their coats. Her car. They stood close under the dim streetlight. The air between them was thick with unspoken feelings. Marcus looked at her with kindness. "You deserve to feel alive, Madeline." She looked down, then back up, meeting his eyes. "I want to. I just don't know how." He reached out, lightly brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. It was the closest he'd come to touching her. But it felt charged with meaning. They both knew what the moment could lead to. But neither moved forward. Madeline got into her car, heart pounding, and drove home in silence. Inside, David was watching a movie, oblivious to the storm inside his wife. Madeline lay awake that night, torn between loyalty and longing. She didn't want to hurt David. She wanted to fix what was broken. But the walls around her heart were crumbling. The painting classes and Marcus were her escape, her reminder that she was more than just a wife and mother. Still, the question lingered. Where was the line she shouldn't cross? And would she be able to stop herself when she got closer to it? Madeline's world felt like it was shifting beneath her feet. The quiet distance between her and David was growing, and the warmth she'd once known seemed like a fading memory. Every day felt harder. Their conversations had shrunk to almost nothing. When David was home, he was distracted, eyes on his phone, lost in work emails, or exhausted from long hours. Madeline tried to reach out, but it felt like she was speaking to a wall at the same time. Marcus was becoming a constant in her thoughts. His steady presence in the painting class, his gentle encouragement. The way he made her feel alive and seen, it was something she hadn't realized she was missing until it was there. But it wasn't just admiration anymore. It was something deeper, something that unsettled her. One afternoon after work, Madeline sat alone at a cafe, staring out the window as rain slid down the glass. She thought about David, about the life they had built, and about Marcus. The pull was confusing. She knew what she had with David was comfortable, familiar. But something inside her screamed for more, for passion, connection, and attention. Her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "How was your day?" The message read. She smiled softly, then typed back, "Long but better now." Their messages became a secret lifeline. They shared favorite songs, talked about their dreams, and sometimes sent photos of their latest paintings. It felt safe, like friendship. But the line between friendship and something more blurred. One evening, Marcus invited Madeline to an art walk downtown. It was a casual event, local artists displaying work in open studios, live music and soft chatter filling the streets. She agreed, telling David she had plans with a friend out at the art walk. Marcus was radiant, talking passionately about each artist's story. Madeline watched him with admiration. For the first time in months, she felt truly connected to someone. His laughter was warm and genuine. His eyes held a kindness that made her heart flutter. They walked along the quiet streets, the city lights glowing softly. Marcus stopped beside her and said, "You deserve happiness, Madeline. Never settle for less." She looked away, fighting the emotions rising inside her. "It's not that simple." "No," he said quietly, "but you're stronger than you think." The moment was electric. They stood close, the world fading around them. Suddenly, Madeline pulled back. "I can't," she whispered. Marcus nodded, understanding. She left the art walk feeling torn between loyalty and desire. Between what was right and what felt true. Back home, David was distant. They barely spoke. One night, Madeline tried again. "Are we okay?" she asked softly. David shrugged. "I don't know. Work has been stressful." That was the first honest thing he'd said in weeks. Madeline realized they were both drifting, lost in their own worlds. One afternoon, after a painting class, Marcus walked her to her car. The sky was overcast and a gentle breeze carried the scent of rain. She hesitated, then asked, "Do you think I'm making a mistake?" He looked into her eyes. "I think you're searching for something real, and that's not a mistake." "But I'm married," she said, voice trembling. "So am I," Marcus replied, his tone soft but firm. They stood there in silence. Two people caught between what they wanted and what they knew they should do. Madeline's heart ached. She wanted to hold on to what she had with David, but she also longed for the feeling Marcus gave her, the feeling of being alive, seen and understood. Days turned into weeks. Madeline struggled to make sense of her feelings. She didn't cross the line, no kisses, no promises. But the emotional closeness felt like a quiet betrayal. Every text from Marcus was both a comfort and a challenge. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Madeline found herself texting him, pouring out her frustrations. Marcus listened, offered support, and reminded her that she deserved joy. But the more she leaned on him, the more she felt the gap widening with David. She knew something had to change. Madeline decided to face David. One evening, she sat him down and said, "We need to talk. About us." David looked surprised, but nodded. They spent hours sharing their feelings, the loneliness, the distance, the unmet needs. It wasn't easy. There were tears, misunderstandings, and moments of silence. But beneath it all was a shared hope, a hope to rebuild what had been lost. They agreed to try counseling, to be honest, and to fight for their marriage. As for Marcus, Madeline told him she needed space. She explained that her heart belonged to her family and she wanted to honor that. Marcus understood. "You're doing the brave thing," he said. Madeline realized that the story wasn't about Marcus or David, it was about herself. About finding strength to face her fears, to seek happiness honestly, and to reclaim her identity. She was not perfect. She had doubts, longings, and moments of weakness. But she also had courage, the courage to choose what was right even when it was hard. Madeline's journey wasn't over. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to walk it one step at a time. Madeline felt the weight of the last few months settle on her shoulders as she looked in the mirror. One early morning. The woman staring back wasn't the same woman who had walked into that painting studio weeks ago. Filled with quiet loneliness and uncertainty. She was changed, more aware, more vulnerable, and somehow stronger. After telling Marcus she needed space, their conversation slowed and then stopped. At first, Madeline felt a strange emptiness. Marcus's kindness and attention had been a light in her dark days. But she knew distancing herself was the right choice, not because Marcus was wrong, but because she had to confront her own truth. Madeline turned her focus. Back to David. Their decision to attend counseling together was tentative but hopeful. They entered therapy as strangers in a marriage, both unsure if they could find their way back to each other. The sessions were hard, painful memories surfaced, frustrations spilled out, and sometimes they both wanted to give up. But step by step, conversation by conversation, they began to rebuild. David showed more effort opening up about his stress and fears. Madeline shared her feelings of invisibility and loneliness. For the first time in a long time, they listened without judgment. The silence between them started to fill with understanding. Outside of counseling, Madeline rediscovered herself. She painted not for anyone but herself, splashing colors on canvases late into the night. Art became a way to process the chaos in her heart, her doubts, regrets, and hopes. It reminded her that she was more than a wife or a mom. She was her own person, capable of growth and change. One evening, after a long session, Madeline and David sat on their porch wrapped in blankets. The sky was clear, the stars twinkling softly. David took her hand and said, "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you." Madeline smiled gently. "I'm sorry too. I thought maybe it was just me." They laughed quietly. The first genuine moment in weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. As days turned to weeks, the tension between them eased. They found little ways to reconnect, cooking dinner together, taking evening walks, sharing stories about their day. The spark wasn't blazing, but it was rekindling. Madeline's thoughts about Marcus faded into memories. She was grateful for the light he had brought into her life, but she no longer needed it to shine. She had found her own strength and a renewed love for her husband. One afternoon, Madeline ran into Marcus at a local coffee shop. They greeted each other with warm smiles and brief hugs. Marcus told her about a new art exhibit he was curating. Madeline wished him well and realized how far she had come. No longing, no confusion. Just respect and kindness. She walked away feeling peaceful. Looking back, Madeline understood that her journey wasn't about choosing between two men. It was about choosing herself, her happiness, her dignity, and her future. She had learned that love wasn't always easy. It required honesty, courage, and forgiveness. Sometimes it meant facing painful truths and making difficult choices. Madeline's story was one of growth, from loneliness to connection, from confusion to clarity. She wasn't perfect. She had stumbled, questioned, and felt lost. But she had also found hope and strength as she stood before the mirror once more. She smiled at the woman reflected back, a woman who had faced her fears, embraced her truth, and chosen to move forward with grace and courage.